There was an old fox that lived under the rocks at the foot of a huge oak tree. And of all the foxes that ever lived, there was none so bad as he. His step was soft with his padded feet, and his claws were sharp beneath. And the sharp was his eyes, and sharp were his ears, and sharp were his terrible teeth. And the dreadest place you ever did see was this old fox's den. It was strewed with the down of the tender chick and the quills of the mother hen. He dragged them in this dismal den and piled their bones together and killed them dead and sucked their blood and ate their flesh and picked their bones and warmed his bed with their feathers. But while the old fox lived under the rocks, as wicked as he could be, an owl had built his nest in a large hole. It was up high at the top of the tree. This old owl was named Hooty, and often at night when loudly the night wind blew, he waked the old fox in his hole in the rocks with his wit-to-hoo-hoo, to-hoo, to-hoo. Then the owl would laugh at the top of the tree to hear him wake and growl, for he hated the fox that lived down in the rocks, and the fox, he hated the owl. Now the owl had a little son, Billy by name, and a beautiful owlet was he. His eyes were as big as the lamps of a gig, and his Billy was a wonder to see. He never cried when his head was combed, nor screeched when they wiped his nose, or washed his face or got soap in his eyes, and he never tore his clothes. When Hooty was going, he said to his son, "Now, Billy, I command you and beseech you, don't leave the nest, 'tis my earnest request, for the old fox will catch you and eat you. He's watching below to catch you, I know, so don't try to fly till I teach you." And poor little Billy was so very silly, he climbed out of the bough. The old fox laughed with a ha, 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 and thought, "I've got him now." At last he heard a flapping of wings, and Hooty lit on a tree. And his screams were wild when he sought for his child, and Billy nowhere was he. So he cast himself down in his empty nest, and he covered his face with his wing, and the big sobs came from his speckled breast, and he cried like anything. And he screamed so loud, and his woe, that he shook the huge oak tree. And the old fox heard as he lay below, and showed no sign of sorrow did show, but he laughed a hee. The old owl stopped crying and wiped his eyes, and he shook his fist at the fox and said, "You villain, you stole my child and carried him under the rocks. You've eaten my Billy, my pretty firstborn, without any equal for beauty. But I'll tell Jack with his hounds and his horn, and as sure as my name is Hooty, and the bow-wow dogs and the toot-toot horns and the galloping horse and Jack will race you and chase you and everywhere trace you and under the long, long track. And I will think of my Billy that's dead as I flap along on the trail, and to see the dogs bite off your cruel head and Jack ride away with your tail." So in the morning, out came Jack, with his spurs on his boots and his whip to crack. He saddled his horse and called to his pack, and started off on the fox's track. Away he went with the clattering sound of the swift-footed horse on the frosty ground, and the horns that rang with a merry sound, and a deep-mouthed bay of the rapid hound. With a toot-toot-tat-too and a toot-toot-tat-too, they made such a noise as they flew that the old fox didn't know exactly what to do. For the fox, he listened and he heard them come, and dropped the duck he was carrying home, and ran through the wood as fast as he could, and made for the den that he started from. The fox went skimming along the ground, but nearer he heard the bay of the hound, and on he went like the rustling wind, but the dogs came closer and closer behind, till his legs were tired and his feet were sore, and he found he couldn't go on anymore. Then he crept in a hole that he chanced to see, down at the foot of a hollow tree. But just as he thought he had ended the chase and was safe from the dogs in his hiding place, he heard old Hooty as down he flew and lit on the tree with the hoot-too-hoo-hoo. And the barking dogs came barking, glad to see that the fox was hid in the hollow tree. For there the fox was crouching beneath, arching his back and showing his teeth. And his eyes were like sparks shining back in the dark, and his tongue was hanging out and gasping for breath, and froth of his lips, but game to the death. And he fought and fought the dogs till he died, and he bit Grover's foot, and he cut Tara's side. He tore them in pieces. No mercy he begs, for some of the dogs limped home on 3 legs. And Jack came out and cut off his long gray tail and carried it home to hang on a nail. For this was the fox, so Jack would tell, that ran so far and fought so well. And the owl looked down from the branch overhead, where the lifeless body, tailless body of the fox lay dead. And he laughed aloud as he flew, with a wit hoo-hoo and a wit